Hey there, we're the West Slot Pirates and welcome to the show. We're here to share our thoughts on Northwestern athletics and college sports with thoughts and analysis from the visceral to the statistical. We run our tailgate with the red pirate flag flying high above as we give no quarter, especially the fourth. I'm Sam Walter.
I'm John Lacombe.
And I'm Eric Skoskauspo.
So we're on to our previews of a team that I love to shit on. We all love to shit on. I've been shitting on this team my entire life, and if the common theory is to be heard and you kind of listen to the rumblings going on around, we may not have much longer to do that. That's right, we're talking Nebraska today.
Yeah, we've taken so much glee in all of the that has been so many times idiotic. This is the year. This is the year for so many years when we've been like, no, it's not. And yeah.
When did they join the Big Ten? Was it
2012, I think.
Has it really been 12 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for us, I mean, the vast majority of those have been fun, especially during the Scott Frost era, but yeah, that may be slowly grinding to a halt here.
And
this is where maybe we just take a moment to celebrate they haven't been to a bowl game since 2016.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Like, I am going to stay on the wagon. Prove me wrong.
Attaboy, Sammy.
Prove me wrong. Until they do it, I still think they suck.
I love your spirit, man.
But, John, like, even last year, defensively, they took a huge step forward under Matt Rhule. Another year, they've been bringing in a lot of big name transfers. Any on defense, or tell us about? I don't want to call them the black shirts because fuck that. Tell me about the Nebraska defense.
Sam, I love your hate. I love your spirit. I love the Colorado Buffalo that comes out in you anytime we talk about Nebraska.
Tatonka.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, this is one of those previews that I've been thinking about for a while. I was thinking about it for a while before we prepped it, and it's for what we've been kind of dancing around. So we talked earlier in the summer about how, we talked about it a couple of times. The single biggest change we've witnessed over the duration of this pod is the erosion and the collapse of the Michigan State defense. And then if we're talking about tradition, yeah, there's then this extremely fun tradition that we've been able to rely on over the years, which is making fun of Nebraska. And in my case, of Nebraska's defense. And those days just might be over. So Sam said it. It's not like we didn't know this was coming, and it's not like you couldn't see it going into last season. Matt Rhule is a great football coach, and he tends to make great football coach decisions. And he went and he got Tony White from Syracuse at DC, who is, by all accounts, also a great football coach. So now they've got multiple great coaches presiding over this defense and operating it in what has so far been an elite fashion, and the results are already starting to manifest. So Nebraska leapt up to the fifth best defense in the conference last year, and they did it in very classically Tony White fashion. And they're totally poised to run all of that back this year. So we talked a little about it last year when White first arrived at Nebraska. But White's brand of defense is a balanced 3-3-5, and the thing about Tony White's 3-3-5 is that it's earned the reputation for being shockingly good against the run. So this was a defense that he stunned the ACC with at Syracuse, and he stunned the Big Ten with it last year. So what this defense does really well is it deploys three big boys across the defensive line in unconventional shifts that maximize their effectiveness, put them in an excellent position to succeed against the run. This is not a scheme most teams see very often during the course of the season, and White really uses that to his advantage. So we've talked for years about how Ty Robinson, who's a defensive tackle for Nebraska, is a great football player who has always been an underutilized asset on a mediocre defense. Well, he was great last year, and so was Jamari Butler at one of the other defensive line spots, and the dude who I think, frankly, still makes every Northwestern fan twitch a little bit when we say his name, Nash Hutmacher, who was a nightmare when we played Nebraska this past year. So the front line had kind of been an area of chronic underperformance for Nebraska, and now it is a major strength on this defense, and it's a major strength with every starter returning. Now, Nebraska does lose standout linebacker Luke Reimer, who is a guy who's been in the Nebraska mix forever. It's a name that a lot of people are really familiar with. But honestly, that feels like a negligible loss to me. And it kind of effectively represents waving goodbye to that old 3-4 era and transitioning into this 3-3-5 era. So Nebraska allowed less than 100 rush yards a game last year. They were awesome on run defense. And yes, teams are going to be able to throw against Nebraska, and Nebraska is going to have some trouble getting to the quarterback. But a big thing you have to understand, and this is something that we girded ourselves against heading into last season, Tony White's defense basically got better every year that he was at Syracuse. His entire Syracuse career at DC. They got better every year and topped out really at just about the top of the ACC. And he has veteran performers up front right now. He has another year to recruit his kind of guys to fill out the rest of this defense. So don't be surprised, even though there isn't much, at least in terms of names on paper here in the back, do not be surprised if he mints a couple of stars in the back eight. But again, on the other hand, make no mistake, White doesn't need stars back there. He didn't have stars at Syracuse. He's great at his job. And he's going to coach the right performance out of every guy. And it's funny because we've used this comparison before, but the Jim Leonard comparison comes up when you look at a defense that doesn't have stars jumping off the page everywhere at every position and doesn't have statistical production jumping off the page, but is still getting great results. That's the kind of defense Tony White puts together, especially against the run. So, again, circling back to where we started and everything we were alluding to off the top, it greatly pains me to say this, but Nebraska's defense is an arrow pointing way up right now, and I don't see that changing.
And yet, prove me wrong. Show me on the field. And
attaboy, Sammy.
Show me. Scuzz, offensively, Nebraska has, last year they had some trouble at quarterback. I think that might be putting it lightly. But Matt Rhule is a really good coach. And beyond that, he's a really good recruiter. And that may be paying off in kind of spades this year, perhaps.
I'm not ready to talk about that yet, Sam.
Fair. I'm not ready to listen to it, so great. We're on the same page.
Yeah, we're gonna warm up a little bit with this. As much shit as we talked about Scott Frost during his magical 5 years leading Nebraska, specifically his offense's penchant for turning the ball over in absolutely brutal times to completely shoot themselves in the foot and ruin their chances of winning seasons year after year after year after year. Last year's offense was one for the ages, folks. You guys mentioned the incredible jump on defense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they went backwards on offense and scored fewer points than they averaged on defense. 18 points a game.
If only there was an offensive horror show football game we could all point to that would remind us of this.
I mean, this was brutal. So, I mean, we knew going into the season that they were not going to be awesome. Rhule was just getting started. He'd already kind of signaled like, hey, we got a lot of work to do on the O-line, et cetera. But they had, that O-line was, a work in progress, but it was much better than what they'd had the year before with much more plausible coaching talent surrounding the team. They had a reasonable transfer QB in Jeff Sims coming from Georgia Tech. They had some really decent wide receiver talent. I thought, they had some pieces to, not that they were going to be good in year one under Rhule, but they could start making some progress. And then it was an unmitigated disaster across the board. Speedster wideout Xavier Betts left the team in August, and then their top returning wide receiver was injured pretty early on. Poor Jeff Sims could not hold on the ball. I think, 5 turnovers in that Colorado game. What's somewhat amusing in a dark way is that Heinrich Harburg, who came in, behind Sims, fumbled the ball, lost just as many fumbles. They both lost 4 fumbles. 4 fumbles each. I think the leading fumbler in college football last year was a running back with like 6 lost.
Wait, Scuzz, are you saying a Nebraska quarterback fumbled the football a lot? Is that what you're telling me?
Whoa.
Exactly.
Whoa.
It's like the ghost of Scott Frost and never left.
After the Adrian Martinez era, I just have so much trouble believing such a thing could be possible.
The ghost of Scott Frost, may he forever reign. I don't like. We love to take our shots at Nebraska. I don't wish any of these kids ill, right?
No,
but
this
has been a pattern, and it's been comedic in its tragedy, etc. And then, much like John, you just said on the defensive side, let's take a minute to bask in this. And now we need to flush all of that because the indicators for 2024 are pointing straight up. So, the bones of this offense were decent last year. And frankly, they're better this year. Rhule talked about O-line a lot last year and how they needed to get, he talked about how they blocked RPOs when he was at Baylor and how he knew that he was not going to be able to operate that same way now that he was in the Big Ten, that he had to target a different kind of profile on the offensive line. He had to find a different type of player that was more athletic, that was just as athletic, but more physical, bigger, could match up with the rugged defenses in the conference. If only Scott Frost had perspective like that. Anyways, I digress. So he knew that going in, and they continue to grow in that unit. The talent profile, the depth. They returned 8 of the top 10 from last year, plus a Florida transfer and 2 stud recruits. So that room is healthy. I'm not sold on the running backs. Like, there's clearly talent in the running back room at Nebraska. There always is, but nobody could run worth a damn last year. And I mean, Harburg ended up being the leading rusher on the team. Now, they return the 2. Sorry.
No problem.
They return the top 2 running backs, and I think with much better QB play, they should find some footing here. I think their running game will be healthier. They did average 177 last year, but again, it was all Harburg. He had 640 yards. The next best running back only had 400. I'm sorry, Harburg lost a lot of yardage. He had 477 was his net. Point being, though, that they just weren't a dominant running team last year in any way, shape, or form, and that the guys in that room didn't look great. The wide receiver room is a big unknown this year. They do get in a nice transfer from Wake Forest in Jamela Banks. They have a transfer from Wyoming, who was at Texas prior. They have a bunch of guys who played as freshmen last year that were all reasonable recruits. The big tight end, Thomas Fedoni, is back. We've been talking about him for a couple of years. He's not shown much on the field in terms of like numbers and production, but he's a massive body and a really highly rated guy, certainly a strong blocker, etc. So that's all. Like I said, the bones are good. In truth, all that is I'm just burying the lead because Nebraska has maybe got one of, quote, those guys at quarterback for the first time in forever. They've had good quarterbacks. We mentioned Adrian Martinez, Taylor Martinez did some stuff. There were a couple other guys that have had moments. Yeah, I mean, those 2 Martinez's were prolific college quarterbacks, like turnovers aside. But I cannot remember the last time Nebraska had a dude like this. Dylan Raiola has not played a down yet. So this is all projection on paper. But he's the number 2 overall quarterback in last year's class and a legit 5-star NFL quarterback prospect. He decommitted from Georgia to go to Nebraska, where his dad played, and his uncle is already the offensive line coach. He's a huge arm, a big frame, he's mobile enough to be elusive, and he's a ton of football IQ. Again, it's just all projections, just on paper, but still.
Can I just interject one thing real quick here, Scuzz? It's also important to remember when you look at Dylan Raiola and then you look at the star-crossed careers of both Martinez's, one thing both of those dudes share, despite all the ups and downs, they both did a lot of stuff right away at Nebraska. Both of those guys had impact freshman years. So it's like anyone who's like, yeah, but he's only a freshman. No, like that part has been done before.
Yeah, they both had impact freshman years. They both also got banged up a lot because they ran the ball a ton, and they were relatively like smaller guys. Raiola is 6'3", 220. I mean, this dude is straight out of central casting to be a top flight NFL quarterback. I'm really glad we don't have to play him this year. Now, I think Rhule is smart enough to ease Raiola into an offensive, construction. Like from a pressure standpoint, you're going to see a lot of focus on the run game this year and a lot of easy concepts for Raiola to diagnose. But he's already had an impact on Nebraska's recruiting, and the it's spring ball, so you got to take a little bit with a grain of salt. But like the talk out of spring ball is he's already making other players better, and his IQ, his knowledge of the game, is just light years beyond anything that they had on the field last year. If he plays well as a freshman, Nebraska's going to start recruiting at like Colorado circa 2023 levels. And I just think like this could supercharge what we already thought was going to be a relatively strong Matt Rhule run program. I think they have the potential to really blossom over the next couple of years. I hate to say it, but it's true. And now all this being said, there are a couple of potential detractors, right? So real talk, Nebraska is not the lowest pressure place to play. If anything goes poorly, there could be, Raiola could end up deciding to leave. He'd have his pick of teams if he wanted to transfer. The offensive coordinator, Marcus Satterfield. Satterfield? Yes, Satterfield. Sorry. The offensive coordinator, Marcus Satterfield, no relation to Scott Satterfield, I might add, who is not a good football coach in my opinion. Marcus had, this pretty rough year last year at Nebraska, which you certainly could just chalk up to quarterbacks and bad luck. He had 2 years at South Carolina prior to coming to Nebraska. One of those years was very pedestrian. The other was very good. The difference is that Spencer Rattler transferred into South Carolina in between year one and year two. So he might be just kind of your average run-of-the-mill offensive coordinator, but he has already shown that with a really good QB, he can put up some pretty awesome numbers, and that's in a really tough defensive conference. So I just think like all the signs here point to a pretty strong trajectory for this offense. The type of quarterback and player that Nebraska fans have not seen in decades. And I like it bodes very, very well. Maybe not quite this year in that they're still going to be getting up to speed and taking the training wheels off, etc. But I certainly like them with that defense behind them to be able to make some real noise in the conference this year.
If you or a loved one is seriously injured by someone else's negligence, hire Kent Simpson of the Simpson Law Group. After over a decade prosecuting murder cases in Chicago, Simpson opened his own firm focused on wrongful death and personal injury cases. He specializes in car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and other transportation accidents, as well as construction accidents, medical negligence, slip and falls, product liability, and more. Millions recovered for clients. No fee unless he wins. The Simpson Law Group. Compassion, empathy, and vigorous advocacy. Go to simpsonlawgroup.com or call 312-332-2107 for a free consultation. And go Cats.
In nature of a pivot, if you want to make noise in a conference and you're building your way back up, you can't ask for a better schedule than this. The team's on it and the way that it's constructed.
So let's get into that. Opening up the season at home against UTEP, then Colorado, then Northern Iowa, then Illinois. 4-game homestand to start off the season. They go to Purdue. They're home for Rutgers. Then they get their bye week. They travel to Indiana. They travel to Ohio State. They're home for UCLA. They get another bye week. Then they go to USC, home for Wisconsin, and finish off the season at Iowa. So,
I mean, it's not a Rutgers schedule,
not.
But it is pretty easy.
It's not just so. Are there teams on here? Yeah, but on the other hand, you can be like, no Oregon, no Washington, no Michigan, no Penn State. So start there, right? But it's such a backloaded schedule.
Well, and the 3 toughest games are road games. The home fans have a chance to see 5 or 6 wins.
There's
maybe 7.
Now, again, like Scott said, like it requires certain things to click, but we have been that voice, and all you longtime listeners know this. When everyone is like drawing out the most rosy prognostications for how Nebraska's season could start, we're always the ones being like, yeah, no, Georgia State's not going to be a walk in the park. There's a really good chance they're going to lose that game.
Pour one out for our buddy Herbie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's exactly what happens. I'm sitting here telling you they could be 8-1 when they go to USC. That's on the table. Now, it takes certain things to break, but look at little things like they get Rutgers at home, which is a sneaky big game.
It's their homecoming, too.
Right. They get UCLA at home. They get Colorado at home. And these are all games that Nebraska may have the better team in all of those games anyway. Is it a guarantee? No. But this is going to be a good football team. Like, certainly don't be surprised if they beat beat Colorado in week 2. But there aren't many teams. I mean, we've talked about some easy schedules, but if you can get by Colorado, and I think everyone was so high on Colorado at the start of last season, but ended this last season wondering what the heck Colorado was, just like they wonder what the heck Colorado was at the start of the season. Well, I mean, if you factor that in, Nebraska's got as easy a path to 5 wins. Illinois, Purdue, Northern Iowa, Colorado, UTEP. Like, Nebraska can win all of those games. And then a sneaky big game against Rutgers at home. Then a bad Indiana team. And then they go get shredded against Ohio State. They're not going to care. And then, like, as we've already discussed, a very mediocre UCLA team. Like, that's, like, and right, because of all of these things that have made us so mad over the years that we felt the need to counter-correct against, if Nebraska gets the kind of start that this schedule might allow them to get, the media is going to lose its effing mind.
Yep.
And we're all going to have to deal with it. But I mean, just prepare yourselves now, because it's on the table.
I don't like it. This is
you're not going to like.
This
what
is
I'm
messing with
next.
my worldview.
I think their ceiling is 10.
Shit, really?
I mean, there are 10 winnable games on here for sure. I don't like them against Ohio State. I don't like them at USC. Everything else is in play.
To me, Wisconsin's the next pivot game after that. I mean, at Iowa obviously is a tough one. They won at Iowa 2 years ago against a way better Iowa team than they had any business beating. If anyone out there thinks Cade McNamara is still going to be healthy and starting at the end of the season,
good point.
I'd love to have a conversation with you. I just think these are two teams with different trajectories right now.
So you see Nebraska taking down Brendan Sullivan's Iowa Hawkeyes late in the season, is what you're telling me?
Stings the nostrils.
Oof. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, you, again, I keep coming back to the media has tried to force feed us this narrative for a decade, and it's been stupid every single year. And now we're sitting here telling you this team has a lot of pieces on both sides of the ball, a potentially transcendent young quarterback, and a cake schedule, especially on the front end. And all of these things could stir into this absolute media frenzy. And obviously it all is going to start in that Colorado game. But if they get by Colorado, like, don't be surprised if they really start rolling. To me, I'm really comfortable saying 8 for them. I think they can get more, but I feel comfortable with 8.
Can I tell a totally unrelated, wildly sidebar personal
Absolutely.
story right now. So, John, the way you just said the word "stupid" brought this flooding back. In college, John, you lived with a couple other dudes in an apartment that, let's just say, was not the most tidy.
It had character, Scuzz. It had character.
It had character. It also had a couple mice.
Those were pets.
One of whom you guys named Stupid.
We did.
And the way you just described the media reaction to Nebraska over the last decade, the way, just the weight and the enunciation of the word "stupid" is exactly how you used to talk about that mouse, and it just brought it all flooding back for me. This is going to be, I mean, they're going to be foaming at the mouth for Nebraska going to Ohio State, 7-0, 6-1, whatever it is, like foaming at the mouth for that game, and I think they're going to get curb stomped, but it is going to be, the narrative by October is going to be Nebraska is back, and it's not going to be nearly as stupid as it's been in the past.
And when they're sitting at 500 going into that Ohio State game, I'm just going to sit back and smile and live in my own little world.
I'll be right there with you, man. May that
Show
be
me.
true.
Got to prove it to me. I mean,
although interesting, now that we're not competing with these guys for a division crown,
nope.
I care less than I did in years past.
Let me just stop you right
Just
there.
me.
Let me just stop you there.
Just me, Sammy. I know that you have an undying hatred that will burn for eternity.
Anything else on Nebraska? I mean, when did the Matt Rhule to the NFL or Matt Rhule to somewhere else rumors start?
You know, I was just starting to think about that, because if he turns them around this quickly, that rumor mill's gonna ramp up real fast.
That's it. Rain on the Nebraska fans parade. We got to find something. But yeah, I mean, hey, like again, Sammy, may you be right. We're gonna find out. I think that Colorado game, we're gonna find out right off the bat. But,
Colorado's not good. They're not good.
I know. That's true. No, I know. It's all set up for them.
Did they lose Travis Henry?
No.
I forget.
No.
I mean, they got Travis Henry. They got Shitter Sanders.
Part of the problem,
I mean,
but the part of the problem with Nebraska or with Colorado last year is that by game 4, they were so beat up that they fell off a cliff the rest of the season. Week 2, they're going to have a lot of the same juice. Now, they've had a bevy of transfers. All the shine has come off the Dion Penny for the moment, but that doesn't mean that they couldn't, do something crazy again. I don't know.
I just feel honor bound to point out that we're close to talking 30 minutes about Nebraska, and that's already way too long. I already feel guilty about this.
Well, on that note, let's go ahead and leave it there. Head to our website, westlawpirates.com, where you can leave comments and questions. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at westlawpirates, and email the show, westlawpirates@gmail.com. Tune in next time as we give our visceral and statistical views on Northwestern athletics. Look for us in the west lot of Ryan Field flying the red pirate flag, because we give no quarter, especially the fourth. For John Lacombe and Eric Scasbo, I'm Sam Walter. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.